a very warm welcome to you for our day one, today's session. Today, we will be talking about the role of youth leadership in mitigating the climate change. And we are glad to have you in our first day session. So, over to you. Yeah. So you can go ahead.
Thank you, Musabir. Thank you, Musabir. Thank you so much for having me today on this important discussion. Because the global climate crisis and global leadership youth, especially in the context of Pakistan, needs to be highlighted on many avenues. This is a vital topic for global disclosure because the panel discussion points should position Pakistani youth today not as mere victims, but as moral leaders and catalysts for climate change who demand accountability from global powers, right? So, first of all, I would like to shed some light and, I would discuss the moral core of climate injustice in Pakistan, starting by framing Pakistan's situation as the ultimate failure of global climate leadership. I would start with the injustice of disproportionate impact, inclusive of minimal contributor and maximal sufferer. Pakistan contributes less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet consistently ranks among the top 10 most climate vulnerable countries of the world. In 2022, the flood, when it happened, this catastrophe, when it happened in 2022, affected 33 million people and caused over $30 billion of historical emissions from industrialized nations. This is the clearest evidence of the failure of global leadership to keep the 1.5 degrees centigrade target alive in Pakistan. I would then move towards the loss and damage debt. Pakistani youth, when we talk about it, are inheriting an existential debt, not financial, but an ecological debt, which surrounds the ecological sufferings happening in Pakistan, caused not only by the decisions made by previous generations in the global north, but the global leaders have a moral and political responsibility to deliver non-debt creating loss and damage funding when it comes to Pakistan. I would emphasize the failure of current global leadership because the lack of ambition, commitment, and solidarity defines the current states of global climate leadership, which includes but not is not limited to the erosion of 1.5 degrees centigrade target, because the ambition gap lies there. Despite the Paris Agreement, as you all know, the major global emitters, G20 nations, which are failing to implement policies that align with the 1.5-degree limit, making the future for young Pakistanis increasingly perilous. Broken promises. The global leaders have continuously failed to deliver the promised $100 billion per year in climate finance to developed nations, stalling crucial adaptation and mitigation projects. I would now like to talk about the geopolitical prioritization over planetary survival. Fossil fuel lack is one of the major issues that many global powers, despite their public pledges, continue to subsidize and invest in fossil fuel infrastructure, undermining the very transition they advocate. This geopolitical inertia is prioritized over climate survival. Tokenism and exclusion. When global leaders do engage with the global south's youth voices, it is often taken and tokenized or sidelined. Climate action is seen as a side event, not as a survival imperative. The third important point that I would want to highlight today is Pakistani youth, who is still leading from the front. The Pakistani youth are stepping into the leadership void as we educate them on sustainable development goal and, and environment climate changes through your platform today. We demand a just transition and climate justice because the youth serves as a moral agent and advocate of Pakistani nation. Global advocacy should have an impact on youth Pakistani activists because they're becoming more powerful voices at international forums like COP negotiations, primarily advocating for the loss and damage fund and the inclusion of just transition principles. especially for energy workers and marginalized communities. The digital and grassroots mobilization groups like youth climate activists like Musawir himself in Pakistan and local climate clubs are spearheading bottom-up approaches in Pakistan. We use digital platforms like we are using today to raise awareness on eco-anxiety and the mental health impact of the crisis. They, like Musawir, myself, and many others, work on practical local solutions like waste management and climate smart agriculture training for rural communities through our online sessions and programs. The challenges faced by emerging youth leaders, the young leaders face unique hurdles that global leadership must help dismantle. So we would talk about the policy exclusion. Youth are routinely excluded from the policy making bodies and mechanism for implementation, like substantially sidelined. National climate policies exist, but often lack effective implementation, tracking mechanism where youth input could be critical. Now, some of the resource constraints that we face in Pakistan are youth led initiatives, because often such initiatives, like Musawir is also taking by the end of December, often operate with minimal funding or experience, limiting their ability to scale up successful projects in vulnerable areas like Gilgit Baltistan or Sindh. Now, they often contend with an intergenerational divide where climate change is dismissed as less urgent than immediate economic or political concern, making national consensus and mobilization difficult. I would like to call to action in the last that we should define a new global youth leadership program or the new definition of a global youth leadership era. This discussion must conclude with clear demands that redefine what global leadership means in this crisis. We demand a global climate accountability mechanism. The global leaders must create a system where major historical emitters are legally and financially held accountable for the damages in vulnerable countries like Pakistan. For the mandate of youth integration that Musawir and myself are having today alongside how loud we have the speaker from Iraq. Today, the mandate of our youth integration is to adopt a global standard that requires 30% youth representation in all national and international climate governance bodies, giving us executive, not just advisory power. So the youth should be able to invest in green skills and mental health. The global financial institutions and donors must shift funding to not only develop national green skills curriculum in Pakistan, but to prepare youth for a renewable energy economy. Not only to provide culturally sensitive mental health resources to address the rising tide of eco anxiety, but to be amongst the most vulnerable communities at the same time. Finally, I would like to say that before I hand over the speaker and the mic to the other speaker and Musawir, that the youth of Pakistan is not asking for charity. We are not asking for charity. We are demanding the right to a livable future and leading the charge for a more justified, justice, and equitable global climate framework for Pakistan. I hope my voice reaches millions hearing and listening today, not only through this platform, but through LinkedIn and other social media platforms as well. Thank you, Musabir.